Okay. Okay, so welcome and hi, Chaim. And what we're going to do today, we're going to have a discussion. It's not going to be, there's not going to be any slides, but we are going to have a discussion about reducing data security risks while allowing data growth. And I think that Chaim is a great person to speak about this topic with. It's going to be a fun discussion, hopefully. I'm Ben Erzberg. I'm chief scientist for Satori. Before that, I was leading research at Imperva, and before that, CTO of Scinet around endpoint protection, analytics, behavioral analytics, and such. Chaim, please present yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Chaim Mazal. I am the SVP of Engineering and CISO at Kandji. Before that, I was at Active Campaign. Before that, I was at Avant, and before that, I was at Uptake. A lot of chances and experience in my career to deal with big data. And so Kandji is enterprise Apple device management and security. So basically, we help consumers manage their Apple device fleets at global scale. With automation of deployments and ease of use and manageability.
Cool. So before I want to know what Kandji means, but before that, I just want to an admin note to the attendees. If you have any questions to ask, feel free to ask them as we go, and I'll just throw them in. So what does Kandji actually mean? Just out of curiosity.
So Kandji is a poisonous jellyfish. So fun fact, our logo, that's a bee, does not correlate and align to the actual real meaning of the word Kandji. But it was something that the founders liked and resonated with them as far as you know, the aesthetic and the brand appeal. And then when we found obviously our logo and design for the bee and the hive, it made a lot of sense for us as a whole. So yeah, it's definitely good branding, definitely good logoing, and really what I think Kandji means is simple, intuitive deployment of your Mac OS fleet in an enterprise environment, because it's a big challenge that the industry has, and happy to be a part of making my peers' lives easier on a daily basis.
Well, by the way, I must say that it's probably me, but I have the Kandji logo on top of my desktop, and I haven't noticed that it's a bee until now. But maybe it's because it's small, but yeah. What do you do at Kandji?
Yeah, so I'm the SVP of Technology. So basically, I'm in charge of all of engineering, and I'm also the CISO. So basically, I was hired on as the CISO, but throughout my career, I've led engineering teams, basically focused very much so on product security. So when I came over to Kandji, right, there probably was about 40 engineers, and there were some organizational and things that were shifting and happening. And you know, I leaned in and they asked me if I would go ahead and take over engineering in its entirety. And I said yes, and I work with a tremendous group of individuals. So I think we have over 120 engineers now across engineering, and obviously security and IT, data, and all of those things are included within the engineering org. So yeah, from A to Z, if it gets built at Kandji, my team is responsible for it.
That's cool. That's like not a usual, by the way, you know, decision to take the head of security as the head of engineering or head of technology.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely unique. I think we're seeing it more. I think we've seen security also transition more to engineering focus. Like yesterday's security that was very like compliance based and focused, or could even have come out of you know, IT at one point. There's been a transition to where security is engineering first organizations, and to be able to really get the buy-in and to be successful within an organization, the security team actually has to build solutions into the platform and work alongside of the rest of engineering to be successful. And so I've had the opportunity to be very fortunate to work at a lot of those forward-thinking organizations and to really kind of help and champion and build that mentality. And it also didn't hurt that I came up as an engineer, and application security was my original primary focus in my career.
Yeah, so definitely bolting the security into the entire process, not just saying that.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, I think. And you mentioned before, along your path, you've been in several, whatever you decide to call them, data-driven companies, hyper-growth data companies. And so, what are the changes you've seen in the last few years in data consumption in such companies?
Yeah, I think the widespread leverage and demand for data across all business units. I think early on in my career, even though it was still a burgeoning thing, there was a lot less demand on data resources, on being able to have mechanisms to be able to access them, also to be able to, gain insights that were pertinent to different business units, right? You have a lot of things that historically existed from, finance or for engineering with some kind of level of complexity as far as BI, but we've seen like a huge growth. I can't think of a singular business segment in my organization that doesn't have a high demand on data. And I think being able to facilitate access to that data and draw the appropriate restrictions for people to be successful has, become extremely complex, because there's a lot of different mechanisms for different business units to be able to be successful with the data they need, right? Engineering has one set of requirements, right? Product has another set of requirements. Finance has another set of requirements. Support has an alternative set of requirements. And so everyone has these unique requirements and unique tools that they use to leverage and be successful with the data. And I think early on in my career, there was like, a core data store or multiple data stores, and you had to do like batch dumps for different groups. There was like heavy requests, right? And like a lot of change management, and it wasn't automated. It wasn't simple. And it was most times ad hoc and very cumbersome and burdensome from the business. One of my coolest experiences, I led application security at a company called Uptake. Uptake was Brad Keywell, co-founder of Groupon, and he built an industrial data analytics company for Fortune 100 companies to be able to manage their industrial tooling. As you can imagine, terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data off of IoT devices, and having an extremely large data science team. And I think this is the first place where the idea of data security operations, or even data operations as a whole, where I saw that in my career. And I think there's a lot of practical examples from challenges that we solved there that I was able to port into my other experiences. But everyone now feels entitled to data to be successful. And I think that's a major improvement as a whole, which means we're making informed decisions. We're growing our business based on facts instead of feelings, which is tremendous.
So yeah, we're seeing that a lot with our customers, of course, and with anyone I'm speaking with, data leaders. We see a lot of data democratization happening, regardless of the term. Data mass native access, where all the teams want a piece of the data to make more value, like RevOps, marketing ops, marketing, sales as a whole, and up to, everybody. And taking that back to you, doesn't that give you nightmares as a as a security leader?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, like as there's been this evolution, there's increased levels of complexity, and obviously as a security leader, or as being part of security-minded organizations, that means more work generally, right? Like, so you have to sit and work with individual stakeholders. You have to define criteria. You have to define roles, you have to find access, you have to look at your data dictionary, you have to map things out to individual users, you have to look based on geographic locations and data regimes and how they interact with the entirety of the sum. So I think as there's been this evolution, it's really sitting down, looking at your main stakeholders, and then drafting and drawing out policy and procedure for what that looks like. But historically, right, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, it takes a lot of resources, and it's project planning that has to take place. And even once you take that unique project planning that might take, depending on the size of the organization, 1 month to 1 year to be able to create this repeatable process, that process doesn't prove out to be so repeatable as the business requirements change, as people's roles and functionality change. So it makes it a full-time requirement for a team to be able to service and address these requests. And then with the advancement of all of these different tools, querying tools for people to have access for data, obviously that makes things more complicated, because that means that people have real-time access, and any divergence that you might have to your original game plan presents and poses risk to the organization. So therefore, how do you stay in front of that? And I think the new modern way of doing it, and how we've been able to have access to being able to make real-time intuitive decisions that allow appropriate access to the appropriate parties and the appropriate controls and regulations. I think that this has been a significant game changer as far as enhancing productivity to the organization, having that pain be less felt by the stakeholders who are requesting that data, and allowing the security team, the data privacy team, and everyone, the data operations team to sleep well at night, because I think you can ask any CISO anywhere and like, well, what keeps you up at night? And you're like, well, hey, the biggest thing is unknown data access to a key or primary data store that might have personally identifiable information in it. Like, you can have a lot of bumps in the night, but like that is the bump in the night, right? So being able to have alerting, being able to have segmentation, being able to have tagging, being able to have individuals request access in real time and get approval and have tracking and logging of all those things. Those are things that didn't exist in my mind, 3 or 4 years ago. And the fact that that they exist now, and that companies can implement them fairly easily and upfront, and take that project planning and time and build something out for the entirety of the organization and have it be flexible and adaptable as they go and need it to be, is something that I know that all of my teams are extremely grateful for, and something that has been a huge improvement to our work as a whole.
Right. So some of the things that you spoke about some of the things that causes you nightmares, right? That keeps you up at night, or wakes you up in the middle of the night, which is mainly around sensitive data and exposure to sensitive data, uncontrolled exposure to sensitive data, and then simplifying that process. Like, what does it look like, the simplification of being able to control access to sensitive data in an organization where data keeps on changing, and data users keep on changing, and the requirements keeps on changing?
Well, let's first start off with the tangible outcome, right? Is everyone has what they need when they need it. No one is tapping their toes, and basically all of the defined material that's required by those individuals for their role and responsibility, that they're able to get it quite quickly with a lot of low drag. Basically, we want people to be set up for success within their roles. And now, how do we get there? So I think that's a multi-faceted answer for a couple different reasons, and it's very organizational dependent. I can talk about my organizations and some of the things that I think that we've done that have helped enable this. Again, one, having a data team that is focused on data operations, and security is obviously part of that data operations. Number two is having a security team that believes that moderation or helping enable correct data access for the organization is part of their key role and responsibility. And three, I think that it means having teams who are ready and willing to work and define of what their minimum viable requirements are for success with data sets, and being able to have a tool that will help you be able to provide those appropriate restrictions while giving the correct flow to data. So historically speaking, I'll just talk about what the problem is and then how we've solved that challenge. Is that team said, hey, I need this data set to be successful, right? And you can plug in whatever business group that is. Unfortunately, as part of this data set, right, there was specific information that they did not need to be successful within the task that they were trying to accomplish. But no one had the time or ability to be able to parse out or obfuscate or leave out certain details of that information in an ad hoc way, because that would be incredibly tedious and cumbersome. So now when you have individuals who say, hey, I need this unique data set, but I only need these columns or I need these rows, right? Having a tool that will allow you to say like, hey, for your use case, the data science team needs this set of data, but they don't need these specific parts of that data set in order to be successful. How can we give them access in real time? How can we create tagging? How can we know that we can set up a role or a policy and we can implement it to them? And they can be successful in real time. And how do we know if their requirements change? How can they make a request to get a revision to that, have it reviewed and approved in real time so they can continue to have that flow of access to information? So that is something that's been very important. So I'm just gonna do the plug here. So we brought in Satori, and when I was first, introduced to the product and the capabilities potentially there within, I was amazed, because this is something that would have been a huge benefit to me and my organizations historically since the beginning of my career. And so at first I was a little bit skeptical that the ease of use and the amount of access that I'd be able to provide in real time, that there was still going to have to be a lot of work that was shouldered by the security team or by the data team, or who was going to be the definitive owners and how we're going to make that work. But then, upon investigation and trial, we found out that we could make rules and policies. We also found out that there's a self-service option, and that even when we go ahead and we tag data sets and we say, okay, hey, this has GDPR information, or this has PII, or these things, right, might be CCPA, or whatever alternative requirement you might have. And then we say like, hey, well, how can we give access to these data sets, but how can we go ahead and, remove that data type that puts it into that tagging or classification? And so we were able to go ahead and map out data, requirements, and even based on tools, right? AWS Athena internally for engineers or developers, or even, things that we have going into Kafka for event streaming for application activities that happen in real time, or whether that's using, Looker for our BI team. How can we go ahead and make sure that we have the appropriate data access by creating these uniform policies, but then at the same time having the flexibility to be able to be dynamic when in fact those things do change by having requests. And those requests that need to be accepted or met happens in seconds, not days, not weeks. We can say, okay, that your request for data is totally acceptable here. This doesn't pose any additional risk and threat to the organization. And, we can go ahead and approve that. And then on top of that, having the ability to set up alerting for any, data queries or requests that might be outside of the normal behavior patterns within our teams has also been something that also lends a significant amount of comfort to the security organization, right? If you're in data science and, you don't need to be querying, our financial information in the team, right? Being able to create alerts about different end users querying different things is also extremely beneficial. So the positive outcome is everyone has what they need when they need it, and we can make adjustments quickly in real time instead of having them be project planned out and take weeks and months in some cases.
So what you mentioned about lastly about the dynamic, I would say alterations or like quick changes in data access, where instead of, and I was also owning a lot of data owner of a lot of data sets, and the processes were usually very, a help desk ticket that needs to be approved by someone, you don't really know by who, and what anonymizations do I need to make sure that they happen so that I can serve this data, and who do I ask? And there's a lot of confusion around that, but once you know your exact requirements and you're able to set it instantaneously, I think that this opens the gate for more like just-in-time approach to data access, where even if someone is allowed to access significant amount of data, you don't have that risk. They need to state a business reason before actually accessing that data. I think that this is a huge impact over just, a data buffet where everyone can take whatever they want without any control, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the other opposite end of the spectrum is like, people having access to prod, doing data dumps, right? Being able to go ahead and manipulate and or view data that might not be appropriate for the organization, might increase, reduce risk as a whole. And even with permissionings and changes and user account access, if you look at, one of the biggest nightmares is having, people who have access to very confidential data or data that might be sensitive to the organization, and having their accounts compromised and having data accessed and then exfiltrated through those user accounts. So being able to have the appropriate access to data, being able to have people successful in their roles and removing the risk, like in a worst case scenario, if account was compromised and you have access to a core data structure or to whatever your data fabric or data lake might be, and you have someone who's able to have that access and query data, and you're like, oh, well, you know what, I have the keys to the kingdom, not so fast. You have access to a whole bunch of information that's useful to that individual as far as their role, but is not critically sensitive or doesn't negatively impact a customer. And being able to reduce that risk is, I can't tell you, worth its weight in gold. Yeah.
So how do you see the borderline, especially since you're leading both, the borderline, because that is often a pain in companies between the data engineering side or the data team side and the security team side.
Yeah.
And how to make them work well together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've had different challenges in different organizations. I think Kandji is special and unique in that everyone is very much aligned towards best possible outcomes for our customers. And because Kandji is a security platform and MDM platform, that it's very much front and center at the organization. So our data team has built out core data functionality within our product to be able to help and enable our customers' success from a security perspective. So then when it comes to data access and data operations internally, it's something that's also treated with the highest amount of respect and treated as a paramount value to the company. So another big portion is, and I feel very strongly about this, is having a security team that are competent engineers who can go ahead and do the work alongside the data and data operations team, and to be able to be a positive influence in, number one, setting up and enabling tooling, number two, being able to provide some kind of informed suggestion making as far as restrictions and data classification, but then also having enough engineering prowess to be able to understand the other side of the conversation when there has to be concessions made, right? So not just being security focused, also being engineering focused. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, it goes back to that shared responsibility model that the data operations team, security is part of their core mission statement, that they're also there to enable the success of the organization as far as access. But also having the security team really be a co-owner in Satori and implementation of how those policies get set up, how the tagging is approached. But I really think it's two pieces of the puzzle. I've worked in other organizations where the data operations team was a little bit more removed and the security team was the main driver. I definitely prefer the current model that we have at Kandji, where everyone is a key stakeholder and everyone believes in the core mission statement, and it's all hands are in. So again, to be 100% transparent and honest, if you were to tell me that the mission statement was owned by the data operations team and had to go ahead and have those key core conversations with the various stakeholders, and they only were provided advisory from the security team, it could work. And it could work well, right? And I think if you were to alternatively say that the security team set up the policies, they set up the procedures, they set up the tagging, but they only received advisory from the data operations team, I think it could also work well. But I think to have the highest level of engagement, to have the highest level of efficiency, to have both teams work together as co-owners of this initiative for the team, I've seen it work. I've seen that work the best because it makes things smooth. It takes away a lot of the drag time. And again, like everyone is working towards the same goal, and that's making sure that we can have highly effective, efficient, access to data within the company as part of the core role. Giving one example of like rolling out new initiatives, right? Like, we have an initiative to take all of our support information. Kandji has one of the best support organizations I've historically had the opportunity to work with. We give every single customer top tier support to Mac admins to help to manage their fleet. And it's incredible, but looking at all the tickets, looking at all the engagement, looking at all those data sets, was a pretty big initiative for us, and being able to give the appropriate teams access in real time. And how do we do that? This is something that I could have spent 6 months on somewhere else, right? Like being able to have the aggregate, being able to have them in Snowflake, being able to go ahead and effectively say, okay, like have at it. You can make sense. You can engage our customers better. You can look at these trends. I think that, again, this is the best that I've seen it work, and that's with that co-ownership model.
So I like a lot of the things you said. I really like. I like the integration part of having the teams really work together, like as a data SecOps organization, where security is also aware of the requirements that data has, and data has security in mind as well. And I also think that what you said about different models being able to work in different companies, that's always, sometimes we're fanatic about a single, like this is how the code should be modeled, or this is how an engineering organization should work. And I think that different models can work as long as I think they're clear and deterministic, and they make sense to the organization itself. By the way, I want to encourage also, if people have additional questions, feel free to send them over. I would just like to give a little bit about what I've seen sometimes as a fail in the data and security connection in the past was the security team raising a red flag at the end of the project, like saying this can ship like this, where they weren't involved enough in the design, which is really a disaster. Like if you're involved, be involved all throughout the process. That's at least
Absolutely. That is a reoccurring theme, right? A lot of organizations, I think, are still trying to bridge the gap in communication and like how to collaborate effectively. And security obviously wants to be able to provide value and save the day and reduce risk for the organization. But really, I agree the responsibility is on security and to be baked in part of the process. And if they haven't figured out a mechanism or lane to do that, it's very important to champion or to have a leader champion to be able to do that, to be an active voice and stakeholder in the process. Because been there, done that, experienced it many times. And unfortunately, it's never pleasant for anyone. A lot of work went in, then we have to go ahead and make changes at the last minute. And security obviously feels like they weren't looped in, and it's back and forth. So having people as part of the end-to-end process is extremely important. And even with creation, we have an incredible DevOps organization here at Kandji as well. They're very also security focused and security minded, and help with a lot of the key data initiatives that we have, as far as upgrades, updates, things like that, rolling out new technologies and baking security controls into the underlying technologies that we use here on a day-to-day basis to allow our customers to be successful. So making sure that that's part of the process. It's a requirement, not just like a checklist that moves forward. There's actual conversations is very important. And so I think when it becomes part of the culture, it becomes important to everyone. And when it's important to everyone, you see there's a lot of tangible changes that happen within an organization. And I think that they lend themselves to success. Like, everyone wants to show up to work and not have to think about security. And the only way that really happens is when everybody thinks about security, which is a strange thing. So,
yeah, I'd like to ask you like a question, like a negative question maybe, but like as a CISO, and I think this is something that's very important to know for non-CISO people. As a CISO, like, what do you consider a turn-off, like when there's a new security product or product that has to do with security that you want to adopt? Like, what are the turn-offs?
that's an easy one, because we could talk about that for an hour. But in all honesty, it's really time to value, right? There's a lot of things that are pitched and posed as being life-changing, but the amount of investment and stand-up and nurturing that needs to take place to make it successful long-term over a period of time, it's almost like the value becomes diminished considerably. Am I better off than I was yesterday? Yeah, totally. But how much better? 10% better, 15% better? It still takes a lot of resources. It still takes a lot of time to get set up. I think one of the other things is companies who have a good product, obviously, but then stagnate. One of the incredible things that I love about new innovative companies is that they're constantly building, they're constantly improving, they're making things better. And if you look at the portfolio of tools that the security team uses, I think most of them are fresh, new, innovative companies who have a lot of very strong ideas about the problems that they're solving and how they can continue to innovate in the space, and they can continue to grow their product. So we've made bets on a lot of companies that we believe are disruptors and people who will revolutionize the security industry as a whole. So I like to bet on ideas because those are the things that yield the most long-term results. But what's on the plus side of that? A company that has a very compelling value proposition that we can get set up and running and realize some of that tangible value in real time. And then we can continue to scope out what success looks like, as we continue to grow with the tool. And Some of the best companies and tools that I've had the experience of working with are tools and companies that I had close relationships with and could help talk about the challenges that I was experiencing in my organization. And I was heard, and those were documented, and solutions were mapped out and charted in their product roadmaps, right? So selfishly, I like to have a lot of involvement because I work at organizations that have a lot of complex problems, and being able to solve those problems is a part of my key mission statement. So I'm very big on up and comers, and I'm very big on companies that are thinking about things in unique, tangible ways that are different. So turning that into a negative, old stale ideas, very heavy and long to value in their life cycle, and then who have stagnated in their growth. So those are no good. I like to bet on innovation, and I'm a strong and firm believer that Satori is that and more.
First of all, thank you. I have one question from the audience. CISO seems to be one of the most stressful jobs. Is it really so? And what do you do to unwind?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot riding on your role in the decision making, and really the communication with the executive leadership team, right? Because the job as a CISO is not to make decisions; it's to inform the business, and then collaboratively have the business make decisions about the assumed risk. But you're right; it is still your company's reputation on the line, your team's execution. So personally, for me to unwind, two things. So one is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, purple belt, been doing that for 6.5 years. And the other one is I like to lift weights and to go on jogs to clear my mind.
That's really cool. So I tried that, by the way, and then I broke a finger. The ninjutsu, not jiu-jitsu. I broke a finger, and then I said, okay, let's do something else. But I'm glad that you're keeping me safe. If we're that's great. Okay, so first of all, it was great speaking with you. I think it's a really important topic, how to keep on innovating and keep on innovating with data, because data is fuel for innovation, of course, without having to to stop everything, to either stop innovation or stop paying attention to security and increasing risks. I do have one last question from the audience, and then we will depart and conclude and wish everyone a great weekend, which is, how do you cut through vendor noise and determine what to prioritize for security projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really it should be determined by threat modeling in your organization, right? Knowing your most critical and valuable assets, knowing right where your biggest areas for improvement are. But then also with vendor noise, to be honest, and a lot of the security companies are going to dislike me for this. I don't respond to any vendor emails or cold calls. All of the vendors that I do business with and I have relationships come with recommendations by either peers in the industry and or by due diligence with being an active part of the community. And that means attending security conferences, attending different events with like-minded individuals and having conversations about the problems that they're trying to solve and how they're being successful within their organizations. So to be completely honest, any vendor that I do business with either came from a previous relationship or came highly recommended by someone in the industry who has a unique or a similar environment to me that has solved the problem in a certain way, and then reach out and do diligence from there. But yeah, there is a lot of hype. there's a lot of advertisements, there is a lot of ways to pull you in. But at the same time, it's really understanding your organization and having access to like-minded individuals who are solving similar problems, and then being involved in the community. Like, it's very, very important, if this is your role and responsibility, to actively engage with other people that have that same mission statement as you on a daily basis, because some of the coolest things that have helped me adapt and evolve my train of thought came from other people who were in other organizations who had similar problems, who had alternative perspectives. So don't believe the hype, don't believe the emails, believe the tangible reality of what works. And yeah, I had someone make a very strong recommendation for Satori, and that's how I fortunately came into the opportunity of being able to implement this amazing tool at my organizations.
Okay. So anything else you want to add, before we conclude?
Yeah, I would just say that, listen, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy, but I do believe that it's easier today than it was yesterday, and tomorrow it will be easier. But that's only if you have the right people, the right tooling, and the right methodology. And I believe that as far as the right people, that's security as an engineering org. And I also believe, or at least a facet of it, right? And then I also believe that using an incredible tool like Satori to be able to enable your business to be successful, that's like the plus, because a lot of times people think about security as a blocker and as something that impedes time to value. And I think by utilizing a tool like Satori as an enabler and being able to say, hey, there's a security investment that's allowing people to do their job better and faster, I think we need more things like that in our industry to be able to continue to have this deep investment. So.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Chaim. It was great speaking with you. And thank you for all the people who listened, and to all the people who might be listening the recorded event. And so thank you all. I just want to add that in 2 weeks we're going to have an event about an online event around self-service data access and how to use the Satori data portal, which is really cool, with the live demonstration. We'll publish the exact date, but it's 2 weeks from now. And in 1 month, we'll be sponsoring Big Data London, and we'll be in there, and we're setting up a party, and everything's going to be fun. So, follow us for more details about that. That's next month. And have a great weekend, everybody, and enjoy. Bye, Chaim.
Thank you so much, Ben. Pleasure as always. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.